Okay, it is week 8. Welcome to week 8 of the crime scenes to convictions, J122. And thought I would provide this recording to you because Thursday is Thanksgiving, and I know that you uh, didn't want to come to a lecture, and I don't want to be doing a lecture on Thanksgiving, so I am providing the recording to you today. So let's get started so I can go over the assignments for the week. Let's start by looking at, okay, so here we are at the home page. And again, you should be aware we have one more lecture to go, and that is week 10. Week 10, and that will be at our regular time on Thursday, 8:30 to 9:30. So I'm going to go ahead and then also point out to the fact that I've provided some special articles that can help you, um, but it doesn't really affect you as much in this class, but it can benefit you in other classes, and you need to download these articles: analytical tips, importance of information literacy, referencing, uh, preparing the annotated bibliography. And then in this class, the article on report writing, which is valuable because you're coming up this week to prepare a draft. Be sure that you look at the rubric for the project this week so that you'll see what you need to do for week 8. So now let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, the course calendar. Here we go. So here we are in week 8, starting from Monday the 20th. A live lecture that was scheduled for tomorrow that we're actually doing today. That's a recording. Your reply posts, which many of you have already supplied good answers, good comments to the initial post. Remember, your reply posts are still due by Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then, of course, your rough draft. Your rough draft is due on this Sunday, the 26th. Very important that you get that rough draft in on time so that I can grade it, so that you can um, continue working on it in week 9. And in week 9, you will find yourself, if you look at week 9, here it is, complete your revisions because the final project is due week 10. Very, very, very important. And so let's go and take a look at the module for week 8. And again, the assignments. The question about the why of a police report. Remember, that's one of the criteria that's in your narrative. And so you want to make sure that you cover the why. And this discussion post gives you an idea about what the why is about. You'll see right here, your rough draft is going to consist of the front sheets. Remember that you're using the template from week 7 that I pointed out to you in week 6. Very important that you use that template because you will lose points right off the bat. You use that template only for week 8 and for your week 10 final project. You should have been working on the front sheet, and if there, and this is information from your field notes, of course, so if there's some things that were not in the scenario from the field notes, a few students have asked me already, you can fill in that information, but make sure that you don't deviate from the process of using that template. Very important. And then your narrative, dealing with the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And notice that the who could be victims, suspects, witnesses, and other individuals. The what is the details of what happened and things that could come up at trial, communication between you and others to get to the facts about what took place. Include key quotations from interviews, if you had quotes and things like that. When, the timing that you arrived, and the timing of the events of the crime, if you're able to ascertain that information. Where, all locations that affect the crime. How was the offense committed? Was it used? Did he use a weapon? Or what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a theft? How did it occur? What specifically was taken? And those kinds of things. And then the all important why suggests a motive. As I've said that before, and as far as you can speculate, but this is not something that you're going to just throw out there. This says here, this is the only time you make an intelligent guess. Remember, your why will come from a number of places. I've said that in your discussion post. It could come from the individuals themselves. It could come from something that you are told by a victim or witness or even a suspect. So, a number of things. And then your conclusion, recommendation, final disposition on how your visit ended. Was there an arrest made? Was there a further investigation taking place? Recommendation for pursuing the case from the scene to the conviction. So this is some key stuff. This section, narrative section, is going to be where the biggest of your points come in. But I'm also going to require that you go through and fill in things like the chain of custody. Chain of custody is very, 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 very important, and I encourage you to make sure that you do fill in the chain of custody in there. Because if you don't, you're going to lose points for that. If there is no suspect, then don't eliminate that section from the template. When you prepare your draft and your final report, and simply state in the conclusion and the recommendation area there that there is no suspect at this time and so forth. Or if you have a description but no suspect, you can include that. But don't make up those kinds of things. Those are not the things I want you to make up. And then if there's only one witness, eliminate section number 2 for witness number 2. If there's one victim, eliminate section 2 from that as well. It's very important. I'll be looking at the statements, and the statements are gleaned primarily from your field reports and the information that was given in week 5 in your field report. So it's very, very, very important. So this is rough draft week, and I will give you feedback to prepare for your week 10. Okay. I'll be checking for accuracy. I'll be checking for grammar, spelling, and other mechanics as well. No APA issues involved here, okay? So that's the project for the week. And then those are the 2 things that you have. So now let's talk about some of the things that will help you. And so let's go to the lesson content, which once again, we are talking about helping you to prepare a police report. Very, very, very important. And making sure that your grammar is right, your spelling is right. And so we're going to deal with writing a report. We're going to deal with the 6 questions in a discussion. We've already talked about these other things. So let's talk about writing a police report. First thing I want to say to you is that that article that I provided to you, that is also on the course homepage, is very, very, very valuable in helping you to prepare your draft and your final document. So your police report, you have to remember, is a roadmap. It is the document that the prosecution is going to have access to, that the defense is also going to have access to. And so it needs to be accurate in terms of what you observed, what you discovered during the course of your investigation, and it must be in straight terms, as it says, easily understood, and at most of what you write will be used to make your judgments and decisions from what you observed. You'll have to prepare in the future, and now to this time, well, you've prepared field notes, but you'll be preparing logs, administrative report, operation reports, memorandums, policies and procedures, and more. Remember, all of these things are subject to what we call discovery, which means that the other side, the defense and the prosecution, are entitled to the details of that information. So don't prepare a report that you would be embarrassed about spelling, grammatically, and accuracy. Very, very, very important. And so I'm going to remind you of a few things that occur in these reports. And then you need to remember these and these bullet points. Your report needs to be accurate, and to the point. Now, let me explain to you when I say accurate. For example, let me give you an example of what I did with a police report. I had a copy of a police report where a person alleged that they were the victim of robbery from my client. And they said that the incident happened on April the 31st. And that's what was written in the report. And that was information that allegedly came from the victim, and the police officer who wrote the report took the statement, wrote that in the report. So once it's in the report, it is considered as evidence that could be used in trial. So anyway, that gave me an opening. And what I ended up being able to do successfully was, number one, to get the witness to say that, yes, it happened on April 31st. And I said, are you sure about that? And they said, yes, I'm positive. And I was done. I didn't have any more questions. So then the prosecutor got up to ask questions of the person, says, and they tried to clean it up because they said that, is it possible that this could have happened on another date? Well, what they were doing, they were helping me in reality. This is a real case, I'm telling you. And so here's the deal. The report kind of gave me an opening that I needed as a defense attorney representing that individual that I went to. And so it was some inaccurate information in there. So then the police officer got on the stand, and I had him to read from the report, and he read the same thing. And he said he was the author of that report. Well, let me speed ahead. So went through the trial and came to closing arguments. When I got to the closing arguments, this is what I said. I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I said, my client, and I mentioned his name and pointed to him, was not guilty of this offense. In fact, the offense, we don't even know if it ever occurred, but if it did, it didn't involve this person. You heard from the stand the testimony of the witness saying that the event happened on April 31st. You heard the police officer elaborate, and that's what the police report says. So I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when I was a kid, as soon as I said that, the prosecutor jumped up to object. Says it's not relevant to the case when he was a kid. So the judge says overruled. And the reason he said overruled is because I was giving my closing argument, so I'm allowed to make whatever kind of statements I make as long as I tie it to. Well, the judge knew where I was going. So anyway, the truth of the matter is I thanked the judge, and then I thanked the prosecutor. I was being facetious, but I did it. So then I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, back to my point, I says, it is alleged that this event took place on April 31st. And I said, and when I was a kid, my grandmother taught me a poem. And the state's attorney looked like he wanted to jump up, but he didn't. I says, the poem taught me like this. It said, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except the month of February. I learned this as a kid, guys, but I used it. And the jurors knew where I was coming from. And then I went with emphasis on April. 30 days has April. Therefore, I brought to their remembrance, I said, well, man, there's something wrong here. Either the witness wasn't telling the truth or the police didn't have an accurate report. At any rate, it was bad. And it interfered with the ability of the jury to determine beyond a reasonable doubt whether or not my client was guilty. And so as a result, my client was acquitted. There were some other things too. But when we got a chance to talk to the jurors after my client was acquitted and found not guilty, they pointed out, they said that it seemed like the witness wasn't telling the truth, and that it seemed like the police officer, wasn't professional and made mistakes. When you prepare a report, you need to make sure that at the time that you're talking to that person in the field, that they're giving you something that really does exist or could exist or makes sense. Once you put it in that report, it's fair game. So that's why it's important for it to be accurate. Record events as they occur. When you write your report in the narrative section, there's a requirement that you write it in a chronological order. And it is very important because that's how people read things that happen. Something happened first, second, third, or happened the hour before, hour later, and so forth. Chronological is very important. Write only the facts. The facts are ascertained through your investigation, with your field notes, and also, by the way, if your field notes conflict with your police report, there may be some problems too, because those can be used against you as well because of the fact that there could be something that you added in there that you didn't add at the time, because a good, sharp lawyer will ask the question, did you prepare your report first or did you prepare your field notes first? Well, we already know the answer to that. So the answer is always going to be, I prepared my field notes. So would you say that your field notes were prepared closer to the time when you were conducting the investigation and you may have been present at the scene or shortly after leaving the scene? And the answer is going to be yes. So therefore, later you sat down and you wrote your report utilizing your field notes. And in your field notes, I see that there's some things that are missing that are critical. And so then, did you add those in? Why did you add those in the report? Well, I forgot to add them in my field note. As soon as you say that, bam. So you get the point, is what I'm saying. So the facts become not very clear to the trier of fact. And so it's important to have the facts. Include everything that is pertinent to the case, because you can't add it later. Because if you try to add something from the stand that is not in your report, once again, my experience as a defense lawyer, I have used those opportunities to impeach or demonstrate to the trier of fact judges in some cases, but most of the time jurors, that the individual didn't know what they were talking about, or it made it appear as if they were making up stuff, or either that they were holding back something. So it's important that you be consistent from your field reports up to your uh, police report, and then your testimony should also match that as well. Proof your work. That goes with what I just said a few minutes ago before you submit it. Very, very, very important, because you're looking for the issues of accuracy. You're making sure that it's clear enough that a person can look at it and read it. You're not trying to complicate it or overcomplicate things. And then understand and follow the format. I'm talking about when you do your police report. And I've already given you details in week 7, week 6 lecture, and you're going to make sure that you utilize that as well. Very, 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 very important that you do that. Now, just to help you, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open it up again, just for your recollection, to remind you that as you're preparing this draft, you'd see it all the way down at the bottom, right here, where it says begin work on your police report. And then this is the form that I'm talking about that you utilize in order to prepare your draft and your report. So give me a minute while this opens up. Okay, let me go back to, let's see, get this thing out of the way. I want to edit it. I want to bring it to, okay, let's see if I can, there we go, enable editing. Okay, so now I've got it in front of me. So here it is, your front sheet. This is how it looks. You're going to fill in this information. And like I say, some of this you get from the scene. Some of it is like a fence number, maybe a department. You should get that from there. And some of these. So then you get down here and you start talking about the victim number 1. And remember, you're going to fill in the information. Some of this you don't have, but you can just fill in some information. And then the most important part of this is that statement, the statement that you got from them. And you're going to prepare that statement and type it out, and give it as detailed as possible. Now, this says victim number 1. If there is another one, then you'll open that up and use that in victim number 2. But most time you'll have one victim. Suspect. If there is a suspect, you're going to fill in this information. Remember, though, if you don't have a suspect, you can eliminate this whole section. Just clear it out from the report. It's a Word document which you can edit. Same thing with this, so you won't even have that in there. And then, however number of witnesses, you're going to fill in the information, and then the statement is very, 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 very important. Okay, you're going to glean that information from your field notes and from the crime scene from week 5. So if there's only one witness, you don't need to put witness number 2. You don't even have to put in witness number 1. You just put witness, but you use 2 in case there's more than 1, or 3, and so forth. Then you get down here for the offense. You can put in a statute. You can state whether it's a misdemeanor or felony. Probably going to be felony, and you don't have to have all 3 of them filled. But if there's more than one charge possible, then you can fill those in. But here's when we get to the first type of issue, the type of evidence collected. It is very important that you list what that evidence is. It was property or whatever it is that you collected, maybe hair sample or whatever it is. So now we get to the all-important chain of custody, which must be broken down to protect the integrity of the evidence that you took from the scene. So here we go. Every item must be treated properly. You must be able to establish in your report what you did, where you got it. I got it from the north corner of it, or either if there were pictures taken. The pictures, you explain that there are pictures that are included in the report. This you don't really do too much in this class, but I'm just telling you the key thing is that what you're going to do is you're going to break down every piece of evidence that you recovered during your investigation. Then you're going to explain what you did to protect that, maybe put it in a plastic bag, sealed it, put your initials on it and the time on it, maybe put the item number or case number, something on it. The point of the matter is that what's going to end up happening is that information is going to be given to somebody. Usually it's the crime lab or either the evidence technicians or the evidence lab, and then from that point you've done your part. The key thing is that everybody's going to have a chance to prepare the report and keep the chain of custody going all the way until it shows up in court. If the chain is broken, there is a problem, or if there's a possible breaking of the chain. I'll give you an example. In the infamous O.J. Simpson case, which I did some reporting on, and it was also in this movie where there was a detective by the name of Van Adder. He recovered some shoes at the scene of the crime. He took those shoes and he put them in the trunk of his car. Well, he then testified in court that he took the shoes, put them in the trunk of his car, and went home and kept them in the trunk of his car until Monday, and then turned them in. Not a good thing, because the integrity of the shoes could have been a problem. So if anyone else had access, they could have tampered with them and all kinds of things. So the key thing is you want to do your part to maintain the integrity. So that's kind of like an example. But chain of custody is very, 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 very important. And then here you list the items and so forth and so on, the description, serial number, or an approximate value if you have an idea. Usually you get that from the person that you're interviewing. And then the all-important, where most of your points is the narrative. The narrative. First thing I want to tell you is that the narrative should be single-spaced in paragraphs, separated in paragraphs. You don't put in there the caption, the who. I don't want to see that in your report, because that's not the way it's going to be in your reports. I want to see them written, but remember, it's going to be, as I said earlier, chronological order. Everything that is relevant to the case. And remember I said it, if it's not in the report, there's an old rule that it didn't happen and you can't add it later. Be sure to look for the details that answer the who, because that's what I'm really looking for, the what, the when, the where, the how, and then, if possible, the why. Sometimes you don't have the why. You're searching for it. But one of the biggest helps as far as the why is motive. And it can come from a number of places, which I've already commented about. So that's going to be the biggest part of your report. And then you come to your conclusion, your recommendation, and final disposition. You want to make sure that when you do those, that you have summarized what you believe the next step is in the report. If there is no suspect, that's where you're going to include that information, and at the end, the investigation will be continuing. And that's your report. That's what I'm going to be looking for. Okay? So I wanted to take, now that's found again under week 7. Under week 7, okay? All right. So now let's go back to where we are here. Okay, let's go back to week 8. All right, go back to this. So I have covered the requirements of the police report. All right. So now let's talk about 6 questions again, more in detail, which goes back to the narrative and what does it look like. And there's a sample report narrative. That is not the narrative that you're going to use. It just shows you what it might look like. Again, the only thing I don't like about that sample report narrative is it's not in paragraphs. But it says every report must answer the 6 key questions. And we already know what they are: who, what, when, where, how, and if possible, the why. And if you answer these questions thoroughly, then you'll have everything you need for your report. So that's what we mean by the 6 questions. And I already broke down the who. Here's the what, the details of the crime, and what happened, what evidence did you recover, what agencies are involved, there's a need for follow-up, when, the date and time of the incident, did you contact the witnesses or victims and interview them and took statements from them, include that in your report. When was the suspect apprehended? If the suspect was apprehended. You don't have to, I don't want you to make that up. Where? Where did the offense take place? Where were the victims? Where were the witnesses? Where was the suspect, if applicable? Which goes back to what I just said earlier. And the how. How was the crime committed? Was there a weapon involved, or what was involved? Was it with a stolen credit card or a check or a stolen car or whatever? And then how was the crime reported? And then the why. Notice what it says here. What was the motive? And then it says this is the only place where you may have to do some guesswork, but it should be based on the facts. And that's it. That's the essence of the whole thing. So I wanted to make sure that you got that information and that you included that information as well. Okay? So that's what I have for today. I want to make sure that you got this information and go over it before you prepare your draft. So I hope you have a great holiday, great Thanksgiving, and that I will see you not next week because that's week 9, but in week 10. Remember, your final is written, and then I will be, during the course of the week, sending back your some notes to comments. Pay attention to the comments in the grade book that I put in, because that's going to tell you what things I want you to do. You might see a comment that tells you to go back again and look at the field notes. Go back and look at what the scenario. Go back and make sure, because your final report should have everything that's pertinent to satisfy the requirements. And then that'll be it. So I'm going to say to you, good night.